Hi, I'm really glad to be with you today at the Community for All conference, even though I have to be there virtually with you and not in Norfolk, Virginia, which would be really nice because I live in Iowa, as the introduction said, and it's still cold here. So it would be nice to be with you, but I'm so glad we have this Zoom platform and that I'm able to be with you this way. Today, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about how you can use the 5 love languages with your family, your caregiving family. Now, the love languages are a concept that originated with Dr. Gary Chapman. He wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages for Couples in the 1990s, and it became very popular. And since then, he's written many, many more books, some for kids, some for teens, using the love languages with teens, we're using them in your workplace. The love languages for single parents, and a number of others. A few years ago, I was able to team up with Dr. Chapman, and together we wrote this book, Sharing Love Abundantly in Special Needs Families, How to Use the 5 Love Languages While Caring for Your Child with Special Needs. Now, if you purchase this book, it will not come with these fancy little flags, but I really use this book a lot, and so those are just some spots that I've marked. Anyway, in this book, we talked about the 5 love languages and how you can use them in all your relationships within your caregiving family, with your spouse, with your children who have special needs, with your typical children, with your extended family, and even how to use them with some of the people who work with your children, medical professionals, therapists, and educators. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about what's in that book and give you some ideas of how you could start using the love languages in your family. But first, let's take a step back and look a little bit at some love language basics. And the first thing to know about the love languages concept is that everyone has a primary love language, and many people have a secondary one. And we feel most loved when others use our love languages to us, and they feel most loved if we use their love language with them. So, to make one another feel loved and to improve communication in our relationships, we need to speak each other's love languages. So, what are the love languages? Well, according to Dr. Chapman, there are 5 of them. The first one is words of affirmation. The second is quality time. The third one is giving and receiving gifts. The fourth is acts of service. And the final one is physical touch. Now, let's just talk a little bit about what that means. So if you're a words of affirmation person, that means that you really feel loved when someone speaks to you and affirms you, either through the spoken word or the written word. So it could be in the form of unsolicited compliments that someone gives you for something you've done. It could be an expression of gratitude or thanks for something you've done. And a person who likes words of affirmation, and that's their primary language, that person will be devastated if they're insulted or if communicated to with very harsh words. So there's a positive and a negative to each of the love languages, and we have to be very careful in what we say and how we say it to someone who is a words of affirmation person. The next love language is quality time. Now, this means if you're a quality time person, you really appreciate it when someone spends undistracted time with you, when you are the focus of that person's time and attention. It can mean that undivided attention. It can be quality conversations together. It can be activities that you do together. And a person who appreciates quality time, if that's their primary language, they are hurt when you listen to them in a distracted manner, or if you've set something up with them and then you have to postpone or cancel it. Next up, gifts, and this can be receiving and giving gifts. Now, if we're speaking their love language, they'll be receiving the gift. If they're speaking to their language to us, they'll be giving us the gift. Now, these gifts, don't get the idea that this is a real materialistic kind of thing. It isn't. These can be tangible. They need to be tangible gifts. They can be handmade, they can be purchased, or they can be found. If you know somebody has a seashell collection and you find some seashells, you might want to give them one. They would love that. It's the thoughtfulness behind the gift that tells that person, I love you. It could even be a card. We think of a card as a words of affirmation thing. But if you send a nice card to someone who's a gifts person, they're going to receive it as a gift. And so you're speaking their love language again. Gifts people really appreciate gifts in times of crisis or celebration. So if they're going through a hard time and you send them a little gift, or if you're going to a celebration, a life celebration, they'll appreciate the gift. They are hurt when people forget special dates like anniversaries and birthdays. And if there are no tangible gifts that they are given, they like to have something tangible. That doesn't mean expensive, but it is real, something they can see and feel. Now, if you're an acts of service person, your love language means that you like it when people do helpful things for you, and you are always doing helpful things for other people. And these have to be things that the recipient sees as helpful. It can't be what you think they need. It needs to be what they perceive as their need. And it doesn't have to be much. It could be taking out the garbage. It could be gassing up the car. It could be fixing a nice meal. But it doesn't always have to be a big or elaborate act of service. A person who has acts of service as their primary love language will be hurt by laziness and by having other people create messes that they have to then clean up, or forgotten promises. If you promise to do something and you don't, that person will be hurt. This is my love language, and I can tell you that's the truth. Nothing hurts me more than if somebody, maybe my husband said, yeah, I'll vacuum this morning, and he doesn't do it. To me, that's a sign that he doesn't care. That's not what he means at all. He just forgot. But to me, it means he doesn't care. The last love language is physical touch. And it's important to remember that this is not sexual touch. We're talking about deliberate touch that conveys love. It can be a back rub, a foot massage. It could be a kiss or a hug. It can be a pat on the shoulder. It can be all manner of things. It can be even just sitting next to each other on the sofa watching a movie and your hands brushing while you eat popcorn. Any kind of a slap or abuse or neglect causes extreme emotional pain for people for whom physical touch is their primary language. Here's a quick example. When my husband's primary language is physical touch, it is my least, it is my lowest love language. And I'll tell you how you come to know your love languages in just a minute. But when we were young, before we knew anything about the love languages, when we were dating, I would sit on the couch, or I would lay on the couch while my husband sat there, my boyfriend at that time, and I would put my legs over his lap, and we would sit and watch TV that way or whatever. And he had this habit of feeling my kneecap. And he would feel it, and he would trace it, and he would wiggle it back and forth. And it really bothered me. But being young and in love and not knowing that you shouldn't let those things fester, that you need to tell somebody what you feel immediately, I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything the whole time we were dating, while we were engaged, after we were first married. But eventually, after a few years of that, one night he was wiggling my kneecap again, and I said to him, "Would you stop it? It's driving me crazy." He pulled his hand back as if he had been slapped or hit or burned, and he never did it again. And he still will say to me sometimes, "Do you remember that time you kind of lost it just because I was feeling your kneecap?" In his mind, he was doing something very kind and loving. In my mind, it meant nothing because physical touch doesn't mean anything. Since then, we've both learned a lot, and the love languages have helped us with it. So I said a minute ago that I would tell you more about how to determine your love language. Now, in this book, Sharing Love Abundantly, and in any of the love languages books by Dr. Chapman, somewhere inside that book are different love language quizzes. In this book, they're at the end of the first chapter, and there are the quizzes printed there for couples, for singles, for children, for teens. And you're welcome to use that if you have a book or one of the other books. You can also go to the website 5, and that's the digit 5, 5lovelanguages.com, and you can take the online quiz. Now, this is pretty effective for people who have at least a developmental age of 8 and above, but it doesn't always work for our young children or some of our children who have developmental delays. And Dr. Chapman and I have some ideas to share with you on how to determine the love language of a child who may not be able to take the quiz. Now, in the book, it describes something called the mystery game, and that's at the end of chapter 1, which you can use with younger children. And it's a series of questions. Would you rather this or that? And based on their answers, you can get an idea of their love language. Another idea is to use observation. And for 1 week, use one of the love languages with your child and see how your child responds. Then the next week, do the next one until you've gone through all 5, and keep little notes maybe about what you notice. You should see that one of the love languages really, really kind of brings your child alive. When you use that love language, they light up, they're more motivated, they want you to do it more, they're asking you to do it. You've probably found their love language. Now, if observation doesn't work, you can ask yourself 3 questions that one of the parents I interviewed for this book, who's raising a daughter with special needs and she has some communication issues, what they asked themselves as they were trying to figure out her love language. They ask, what calms my child? What motivates my child? And where does my child choose to spend her time? And after they observed her for a while and had answers to those 3 questions, they knew her love language, her primary one, was physical touch, followed closely by words of affirmation. So that might help you too. And one final thing about determining love languages, especially for children, if your child is between the ages of birth and 4, use all the love languages with them. They need them all. We all need all of them. But little children need them especially. They need physical touch to feel nurtured and to grow. They need our acts of service. We're constantly doing them. They need words of affirmation. You know how we're always telling little kids, oh, you're so cute. You're doing that so well. Oh, look at you. You're just amazing. Those are words of affirmation. And then they also need quality time to feel loved and to learn from us. And when we're giving them those 4, we're giving them the 5th one, which is gifts, because all those are gifts that help our children grow. So if your child is between the ages of 0 and 4, or your child's developmental age is that of a young child, no matter how old your child will be, maybe use all the love languages and you will be meeting their needs. Now, using love languages with our children is not the only place where we can use them. We can also use them as couples. And I know it's hard when we're caregiving couples because we're dealing with a lot of stressors in our life, such as time constraints. We don't have enough time, financial constraints, the therapies and the medical treatments and the things that our children need, adaptive equipment, cost a lot of money. Some of us feel a lot of guilt because we think we maybe caused our child's disability, or we're feeling grief because of it. And our guilt and our grief can get in the way of our relationship with a spouse. We may feel isolated because we can't get out. In this time of COVID, we're all feeling that isolation, but it won't end for us when the pandemic ends. A lot of caregiving families feel quite isolated, and that's a threat on our marriage. Geographic separation. If your child needs to have treatment somewhere out of the area where you live, that can be a problem. So can our worries about the future, whether we're worrying about if our children will live past us and what will happen then, or if our children will die young and what will that mean. We worry about those things. And last of all, lack of support. We often feel like we don't have the support we need while caregiving, mainly because people don't understand what we're going through or what we need. And then I would add as a bonus one that didn't get in the book, but I realized after it was written that it should have: lack of sleep. Parents raising kids with special needs lack sleep all the time, and that sleep deprivation can be a real stressor on our marriage. Even so, we do need to speak love to our spouses if we want to keep our relationship strong. And the love languages are an easy, inexpensive way to do it. So here are a few ideas from caregiving spouses about how to use the love languages effectively with your spouse. Words of affirmation. Offer genuine praise for something they do well. Send affirming texts or emails during the day, or write an old-fashioned letter and mail it to your spouse. Wouldn't that be fun to get that in the mail? Quality time. When you're traveling places together, talk in the car instead of listening to the radio. Make that time for the two of you. Have a coffee date on the deck while your child is taking a nap or after the kids are in bed at night. Play a board game together. And let it be kind of a silly board game, because if it's a silly board game that doesn't take a lot of skill, all of a sudden you'll start talking about things while you're playing that game, and you'll start having conversations that you need to have, not necessarily about your kids, but about each other. Acts of service ideas. Fill up the car with gas. Make sure medical equipment is functioning, or take it in if it needs repair. Take turns watching the kids on Saturday morning, so one of you can sleep in every other Saturday and catch up on some of that sleep that you've lost during the week. For physical touch, before your spouse leaves for work and when your spouse comes home, just make sure you give them a hug and a kiss. I really had to learn to do that with my husband. It doesn't matter to me at all. I'd rather leave and see him cleaning out the dishwasher, but he wants a hug and a kiss before he goes to work. Hold hands when you pray. Brush hands, as I mentioned, when you're sharing popcorn or something. The key to using all the love languages with your spouse is to be intentional. Just think about it a little bit and you'll get some ideas. And I want you to know that in Sharing Love Abundantly, at the end of each chapter, whether it's the chapter about love languages with your spouse or your kids who have special needs or typical siblings, there are lists and lists of things that you can do to show the different love languages to your spouse. And they all come from caregiving parents. So they've been field tested by people like us. Now, if you're using the love languages with your kids who have special needs, always keep their developmental age in mind, and then make accommodations based on that. So, and I'll give you an example or two as we go along. For words of affirmation, express empathy to your child in words. If you have a child with autism, that will help them learn empathy also. So be empathetic in what you say to them about how their day went or whatever. Give them specific praise, not just you're a great kid, but what specifically your child did well that you appreciated. Have a victory wall in your house, and maybe it could be a window also, or it could be like, I'm drawing a blank, like the whiteboard stuff, and have a pile of sticky notes there. And when you see your kids doing something good, or when they see other people in the family doing good, write it on a sticky note and put it up on the victory wall. Then it's there for the child to see, it's there for everybody else to see. Great words of affirmation. For quality time, have a game night with your child or a night to do puzzles. You could chase Pokemon together. You could walk the dog together and talk. You could attend sensory events together, like when we have movies in the theater again. Go to some sensory movies or sensory story time at your library, whatever it is. Acts of service. If your child's having a tough morning, make the bed for him or with him and tell him why. Create a visual schedule for your child if that's going to help them organize their day and help them learn to organize their toys. For gifts, if they have to go to an appointment, go out for a little treat after the appointment, maybe some ice cream, or stop at the dollar store and let them pick something out. When you wrap gifts for them, make sure your wrapping paper is in line with their interests. So if they're into Legos, get Lego wrapping paper. If they're into Frozen, get Frozen wrapping paper. You get the idea. Another gift would be to color a picture for your child and give it to them. I think that one's so sweet. Physical touch. Tuck your child in at night under a weighted blanket. Provide them with fidget and chew toys if they're the kind of kid that chews on their clothes or always wants something to play with. Provide those. Put your hands on your child's shoulder and make eye contact when you want to talk to them. That will be very effective. Now, our kids with special needs aren't the only ones that need the 5 love languages spoken to them. So do typical siblings. And there are ideas in this book and in the books for teens and children that Dr. Chapman has also written. There are lots of ideas in there for typical siblings. But what I want to tell you now is the most important thing is that you are intentional with them, just as you are with your spouse and as your kids with special needs. Be intentional in showing the love languages and let them be kids. Give them time to be children, maybe to go out with them and do something special with them if they're a quality time person or whatever. Be sure that they have time for childhood. We often ask typical siblings to almost be another caretaker in our kids' life. We have to be very careful about that because they need time to be kids. That was an issue in our family when I was growing up because my father was disabled. And we had an aunt and uncle who lived in town and they had 3 children. And when they took their kids on camping trips, they made sure at least once in each of our childhoods that we went along with them. Not for an overnight camping trip, but I mean like a 2-week vacation. We need to provide those opportunities for the typical siblings too. And then make time so that sometimes they are the star in your family. It's really easy with the needs of the kids who have special needs to have their needs, their major needs, become all we think about and all we concentrate on. But sometime we need to make the other kids a star, whether that means getting a babysitter for the child with special needs so that you can go do something. Another mom said that they will have days where one person gets to decide everything that we're doing on an outing and they get to be the star that way. There's lots of ways to do it. Another thing is to create family traditions. One family did this by having pizza night every Friday, and then they would rent 2 movies. And the first movie was a family movie for everybody. Then the younger children, who were the ones who had special needs in that family, were put to bed. And the older kids then got to watch the second movie, which was more tailored to their older tastes. They got to feel like they were special. And then finally, model and encourage typical siblings in how to use the love languages with the kids who have special needs and disabilities. Teach them what will be meaningful for the other kids. Show them how to do it. Show them what's appropriate and inappropriate so they can start using the love languages and show their siblings how much they love them. Finally, the love languages can be very useful for the professionals that are in our kids' lives. It's just we have to be careful because that terminology can sometimes have connotations, I guess, that might make professionals scared to use them. I used to be a teacher, and you have to be very careful about how to have a good relationship with children without it being misconstrued in any way. And that's what I'm talking about. So you may need to frame the love languages vocabulary into professional jargon. So if your child goes to physical therapy, instead of saying that your child's primary love language is physical touch, just tell the therapist they need deep massage. And if you can do some massage on their sore muscles or whatever, that's going to help them. Words of affirmation in a school setting is called positive verbal reinforcement. So just let teachers know, if you use a lot of positive reinforcement verbally with my child's going to respond to you better. A quality time, one-on-one attention. If you work with my child one-to-one, at least for 5 minutes, maybe during math class, it's going to make a big difference in how they're performing. Gifts is a tangible reward. These might be the kids that respond to stickers or earning something. And then acts of service would be a one-to-one demonstration of how to do something. You show them how to do it, then do it with them in life skills or something like that. And it's also possible to incorporate the love languages into a child's IEP and 504 plan. You can say, I want it written in the IEP that we will use this kind of thing with my child, and just be sure to use the jargon that's appropriate for each love language. Again, a lot of these ideas are in this book. There's a whole chapter about it. I'm really not trying to sell you the book, but if you're interested, that's the best way to learn more. That's why the book was written, so that you would have that resource. That is all I have to share with you right now. I'm so glad you spent this time with me. I hope you're finding the entire conference, whether you're able to be there in person or if you're watching virtually, I hope you're finding it to be a wealth of information and an encouraging time. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask me other than the discussion questions that we're going to have here in a little bit, feel free to contact me at jolenepphilo@me.com. That's JOLENEPHILO @me.com. You can also go to my website, differentdream.com, and click on the contact button, and you can get me through email that way. Thank you again for being with me today, and I hope you have a great rest of the conference. Bye-bye.